You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
Hello mates, welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. I am welcoming back to the show, first of all, Rick. How are you, mate?
I'm not doing well.
All right. Bright and cheerful as I remember.
I have that coronavirus thing going on, so I'm under a lot of medication.
Oh no.
Bloody glad we do this podcast at a distance. Also welcoming back to the show our lovely mate Bruce Brenneise. Bruce, it's been 1 year and 5 days since you've been on the show. I just done a math real quick and I think it checks out. And we got a lot to catch up on. How have you been?
Oh, I've been great. It's been a super busy year. I did something like 12 conventions last year, including getting together with some of the rest of the Classic Gamers Guild at PAX Prime, which was pretty amazing. So yeah, it's been wonderful.
Oh yes, how did that go?
Well, how did that go? You were there. It was wonderful. I mean, I think we all enjoyed getting to hang out with Lori and Corey Cole.
Oh yeah.
And helping them with their presence, exhibiting their new games at PAX. And I think everyone learned a lot about doing conventions, and hopefully I'll be able to give some advice that makes it an even better presentation the next time they do it.
So it's another reason I'm really bummed out that I missed that show. I missed the opportunity to hang out with everyone. Bloody all the guests that come on the show have been there, and I missed it. I couldn't go because then everyone would find out that I'm just catfishing them, and I'm actually a 29-year-old Norwegian girl. So
You think we would object to that? You think that would not be some sort of an improvement?
Nothing wrong with Norwegians.
So you've done a dozen conventions, but before we get into like the meat of that, or AKA what listeners probably actually want to hear from that, let me get out of the way. Do you have any like kind of crazier convention stories? Any tomfoolery at a convention or traveling issues? Anything fun?
Well, my flight from Phoenix, I think, it's called? Phoenix Fan Fusion. My flight back to Seattle, the airplane had a major issue, like one of their systems failed, and we had to turn back around after maybe 30 minutes or so and circle the airport a few times, and then we came in hot, I guess. I don't know, like the landing gear wasn't able to withdraw up into the plane was part of the issue. Mm-hmm. So probably some sort of an issue with the hydraulic systems. And so they had all of these, like, you know, fire trucks and ambulances and stuff around us on the tarmac as we came back into Phoenix. So that's probably my craziest story over the past year.
Hey, do you know, I'm not sure in this particular case, but do you know why generally when planes have to make an early landing, why they have to circle around a bit before they land?
I think it's often to do with the fuel.
It is. They need to burn off the fuel because they're too heavy to land. They actually plan the fuel based on how much they're going to burn off by making the full trip.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then they're too heavy to land, and that could be disastrous.
Right, yeah, exactly. Don't want to have a big fireball with Bruce at the center cooking.
Ideally not. That's probably like 80% success when they really want to go for 90 or above.
Yeah. So thankfully it was all fine. In the end, we just ended up having to stay in Phoenix a few, some hours into the evening, more than had been planned. And eventually got safely home to Seattle.
What a comforting welcome that must be to see flashing ambulance lights anticipating your disastrous landing.
Well, they warned us. They were like, just don't panic, people. Like, this is what you're gonna see. This, And I think a large part of the job of the the pilot in that sort of situation is just to keep a very level, calm voice and keep everyone from going bananas.
Don't worry, everyone. It's normal for you to see fire on the wings.
Yeah,
We are dealing with this, and you'll be okay.
And gremlins, you know.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that gremlin sitting there pulling wires out of the airplane wing.
Knowing our listener base, I can't be the only one that when you said they're turning the plane around, immediately thought of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade having that moment.
Well, I do have the Indiana Jones style hat, so it would have been very appropriate, right?
I would have picked up on that easier if Bruce was traveling in a Zeppelin.
It's true.
Yes, they've fallen out of fashion lately, I've heard. So, mate, what's a convention day like for you?
Well, let's see. So after I get my stuff all set up before the convention, and then I'm basically standing on my feet for most of could be a 9-hour day. Sometimes I'll have an assistant. Every time I do an away convention, especially. I'll throw the word out there to friends and contacts on social media and see if anyone is local. And so sometimes I've got friends or people who are interested in helping out. Sometimes even fans. I'm always happy to give them some free swag and a free badge to the show and let them have some time to go and enjoy the show. The main thing is it's nice to have bathroom breaks, and it's nice to be able to grab lunch and stuff like that. When you're at this convention, you're doing these super long days. Most conventions that I do are 3 days is pretty typical. And it's just really, really long days, and trying to put on a bright smile and be more outgoing than I would be by nature.
What's usually your most successful convention? Or at least, what was the most, if you don't have a straight answer for that, what was the most successful convention for you this past year?
Generally, Gen Con is one of the biggest and best. That one is in Indianapolis in July, August, around then. It's one of the biggest tabletop gaming conventions in the world. So that one is always really, really successful for me. Another one that does really well is Emerald City Comic Con, which is here in Seattle. And it's just a great show. Lots of people who love art, and since it's a tech city with lots of money, people have money to buy said art, which is very important for me, putting food on the table and all.
Yeah, it keeps your costs down too a bit, I imagine.
Yes, it's nice when it's basically 15-20 minutes down the highway instead of across the country like so many of my other shows.
So actually, how do you make the cross-country trips? I'm curious about carrying all the stock.
So I fly out for basically all of those shows. Anything that's further than maybe 3 to 5 hours drive is probably a show that I'm flying to. And I've got all my stock so that I can get it into a couple large suitcases.
Oh, wow.
And then I'll usually have a duffel bag or something of that nature with a photo backdrop that I can hang my banner on. And so I usually have to check 3 items of luggage, although I figured out over the course of the year that it might actually be cheaper for me to literally just buy a new photo backdrop off of Amazon and have it shipped to wherever I'm going for all of my away shows.
Right.
So I guess I might be doing that, because third item of luggage both ways gets a little pricey.
Yeah, I was half expecting you to say that you would ship it there, ahead of yourself, but I guess it's probably difficult to find a destination to ship it to, and know that it'll be there on time.
It depends, and since I mostly use Airbnbs when I'm doing these shows, I don't know how cool they would be with me shipping stuff to the Airbnb. I might have to have some conversations with people and see, what's possible. Or since I do have a lot of other artist friends who do many of these shows, and so some of these places I might be able to ship things to their hotel and just pick it up from them. But yeah, that's one of the little logistics things I need to figure out this year.
And how about your work itself? Like, tell us about some of the new pieces you've done over the past year since we last heard from you.
Sure. So I've been working on a lot of new client work, of course. I've got some, more stuff from Numenera, which we talked about extensively last time. I've got a bunch of new work from some other tabletop companies that liked what I'd been doing for Numenera. So that's, continuing to grow. And then what's keeping me sane is the work that I do on my Patreon, which is kind of like a world building project where I'm imagining, the world maybe some thousands of years in the future, kind of like a Numenera-esque situation where high technology has fallen and humans have departed, and the world's been ravaged by genetic plagues that have altered things beyond recognition. So it's a very alien future world. So I'm exploring that, and I've been exploring a retelling of Frankenstein. If the Frankenstein monster was basically an experiment left behind by humans after they left the planet, and so he's abandoned in this place of ruins and wasteland. And so it's kind of an exploration of abandonment, really. But I got some really great pieces out of that project over the course of the year, and the eventual goal is to maybe kickstart some short story books where I'm combining the writing and the illustrations that I do, and bringing people into this weird other world that I've been creating for many, many years.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's my favorite part of your personal works is the works where there's a lot of ruins, and you can't really tell if it's another planet or if it's Earth, and civilization has kind of dawned all over again and are coming to being, if you will, with the surroundings of the destruction of the past. It's really cool. It definitely lets the mind wander.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit last time with Numenera, but it's that feeling of a weird sort of hope about what kind of world could exist after we've irredeemably screwed things up. And that, life finds a way, right? So that's of interest to me to explore in a lot of the work that I do.
I believe the saying is life finds a way.
Right. Can't forget, the all important us that
So when you set up at a convention, are you generally advertising the commercial works that you've done?
It's a variety, actually. In terms of what sells, some of my personal work sells really, really well, and some of my commercial work sells really, really well. I tend to test out pieces and see, okay, I think this one might be popular with people, so I'll print up, maybe like 5 to 10 prints, and I will see if people like them, and sometimes it's the stuff, like I've got a pirate ship piece that's been very popular. Some of my Frankenstein pieces have been doing quite well lately. I have a piece where dice are falling from the sky. That's been very, very popular. And Slay the Spire, of course, has been a huge seller for me because that game continues to conquer all before it.
That's right. Won quite a bit of awards last year, didn't it?
Yeah. I honestly can't even remember all the ones that it won and the ones that it was up for, but basically all of the major game magazines that I can think of. I think like PC Gamer, IGN, et cetera, et cetera. Myself and the other core devs from Megacrit, the company, the very tiny company that made the game, we actually flew out to London for I think it was the Games Radar Awards.
Nice.
It was like the golden joystick awards, actually, but sponsored by Games Radar and some other companies. And so I got to fly out for that. We didn't win anything, but just being nominated in that company of games, I mean, it was like literally us and the best of the best of mostly AAA games, a few indie games as well. And unfortunately, so we were up for Best Indie and PC Game of the Year, I believe. We were up for nominated for both of those. I'm trying to remember. Outer Wilds, I think, was the one that won Best Indie.
Right.
And I don't know a lot about it, but it looks like a really cool game.
Is that the... I'm not sure if I'm crossing my wires here. Was that the one that was made by the Fallout people?
That one was made by...
Oh, I'm totally off, aren't I? I'm going to look this up. Hang on.
Yeah, because there's two that have very similar names. There's Outer Wilds, and then there's the one that's like the Fallout people, that's but in space, right?
Yeah.
Outer Wilds was actually funded by... I forget the actor's name, but he played Hero on Heroes.
Yeah.
The TV
show.
Wow.
I didn't know that was...
Yeah.
I didn't know he had anything to do with things like that sort of thing.
Yeah, so apparently that's one of the things that he's been investing his time and money into. So that one won an award, and then World of Warcraft Classic won PC Game of the Year, which was, I have to say,
really?
a bit stings a bit to lose to a game that's 15 years old.
You can't do that. You can't just re-release the same game over and over again and win everything.
Yeah, it was a very odd choice, we all thought.
Yeah.
We weren't expecting to win PC Game of the Year. Like, I mean, the other contenders were also like way up there. Like, I mean, all the best games you've heard about from this past year, probably. But World of Warcraft Classic winning was just like, what?
So does that mean if they've re-released The Godfather into theaters, it's going to clean up at the Oscars again?
Yeah, right.
Right, yeah, or one of George Lucas's remastered Star Wars is going to clean up. Like, yeah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. So, it's like, okay, I get that it's a nostalgia thing, but the funny thing is, those awards even have an award that's specifically for those games, like Warcraft. The award was something like games we're still playing. And it's like, why doesn't Warcraft win that one? It shouldn't be up for Game of the Year in 2019. Okay, that's just ridiculous.
Oh man, I did not know that happened, and now I am retroactively upset for all the time between then and now.
Yeah.
When they say Game of the Year, I didn't know the word year was like, subjective. It's
timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, right?
It's all cyclical. It's,
that's crazy.
But regardless, we're very pleased with how well the game's been received. I think they've sold millions of copies at this point. It's on Switch and PS. We're up to PS4 now. The latest Xbox. I think they're porting it to mobile currently. And it's just, basically it's gotten a wonderful reception from all the critics, and extra credit, and Rock Paper Shotgun, and like all these various venues that we've looked up to for years. So it's been amazing and unexpected.
Yeah, one of the cooler things about that game is how original it is, to the point where, from what I understand, there's already numerous clones of it, either out or in the works. So I think that may be one of the highest honors, as far as I would just imagine from the outside, is that the game has inspired people to start to clone it and things like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's essentially, they kind of created a new subgenre of, I guess, what was it, the deck builder, dungeon crawler, roguelite kind of hybrid. I will say that there were a couple games that came out around the same time, like actually a little bit before Slay the Spire, that had a similar kind of merging of genres, but just didn't have as much popularity, didn't make as much as big of a splash, and perhaps maybe didn't execute the details of the game as quite as smoothly as Slay the Spire did. I'm trying to remember what they're called off the top of my head. I think there's one called like Dream Quest and one that's like Monster something or other. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because I definitely don't think that the Megacrit guys were stealing anyone's march. I think it was kind of just an idea whose time had kind of come. Right. And it was kind of an outshoot of other games that exist in the tabletop space, and mixing that in with what's possible in computer games. And I think that those other games that had come out like maybe a little earlier than Slay the Spire, like in the year or two before it actually came out, and I can tell you these, Megacrit, and I was, making art for this game like, well before those came out, that, in part it's things like, you want, if you can, to invest in all the aspects of a polished game. Mm-hmm. It's great if you have a really cool idea, but people aren't going to trust it and buy it in huge numbers if you don't have things like proper music and sound and art. Mm-hmm. And so from my understanding, those other games, they hit that same kind of area of neat design space, but they had like programmer art and stuff, so it just it looked horrible. And even I can't say that Slay the Spire is entirely immune from that. The art in the game is primarily from 3 different people, and about a third of the art is programmer art. And a lot of people have brought that up, and I always have to kind of like disassociate from that. And I did all of the background art, and I did the title art for the game. So, the iconic picture that comes up when you go on Steam and try to buy the game, that's the one that I did. And then the backgrounds, the environments in the game. And then there's another artist who does all the card art and all the event art, and some of the other art assets, and then there's a programmer who does the character art, right, and some of the smallest art assets in the game.
Right. What's funny is it's often not the game or whatever the genre. It's not usually the one that is the actual true first to do it that gets the recognition. In other words, like, Macintosh, Apple gets credit for the first GUI, even though it was Xerox, and nobody cares about, the Xerox GUI. And, what was before Wolfenstein 3D, I think it was like Maze War. It almost doesn't really matter who the technical first one was. It's the first one to hit critical recognition and success that gets dubbed.
Hitting critical mass and enough people playing it, and I think in our case, being in early access, and then it was discovered by a lot of Chinese game players, I believe, first, and then they were playing this game and really enjoying it, and then it kind of leaked over to the English-speaking side of YouTube and Let's Plays and people who were doing these on a regular basis. And so we got some really big big name with huge following kind of people who were playing this game. In particular, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Northern Lion, but he has quite the following in terms of games that are like roguelikes and roguelites and things like Binding of Isaac and stuff of that nature. And so he picked up the game, and he was so bad at it that when you watch, all it takes is watching like one of his Let's Plays, and anyone with like some basic like logic and stuff. Like I'm not even very good at deck builder type games, but watching him, you're just like, no, don't do that. Okay, I got to buy this game because I can play this so much better than he can. And to be fair to him, he played the game a whole bunch, and he got much better at it, and he eventually beat like the highest difficulty in the final extra boss and all the rest of that. So he is, sucked the marrow out of the bone, so to speak. Maximum attainment. But those early videos in particular, I think, really motivated a lot of people to buy the game because they were just like, this looks like fun. I can do this so much better. I have to get this thing.
Right. And
it just kind of like snowballed from there.
Just to satisfy your curiosity there, Paul, Maze War was considered arguably the first-person shooter. It just wasn't the... It was back in 73, so it was just static screen block motion as opposed to the smooth scrolling Wolfenstein 3D.
Okay, gotcha. No, thanks, mate. Yeah, 'cause I've never actually seen it in motion, so I didn't know that. But I know from my mental picture of it, it has those pseudo 3D walls and this weird floating eyeball that I can't get out of my brain now that you mentioned it.
It's very wizardry style, or the early Might and Magics, where it is just like screen by screen. Which a lot of games like Grimrock kind of tries to throw back to.
Yeah, the so-called blobbers, I think they're called.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, because I think the name is supposedly because your whole party is one blob.
Oh, yes.
That just moves from spot to spot.
Yeah.
Through the dungeon.
Oh, that's pretty. Blobbers, all right, noted. And I guess really, if anything, it kind of proves the point that whatever is technically first kind of doesn't matter, because odds are that somebody just hearing the name is going to have to Google it, which doesn't get the point across that it broke ground.
Sure.
In any sort of way.
Yeah, that's often the case. People come up with really interesting ideas, but at the end of the day, and this is something that's very relevant for me as an artist, it's not so much the novel idea that is king in terms of like success. It's the execution of the idea. Like how well can you execute it will give people confidence, and there's also a bit of luck too. And you can compare like throughout technology, there's so many examples of that, like VCR, Betamax,
beta versus VHS,
all sorts of things.
Well, there's two sayings. One particularly famous is it's not who did it first, it's who did it best. But the other one, which I enjoy a little bit more for the imagery, is the early bird gets the worm, but it's the second mouse who gets the cheese.
Yes.
Nice, yeah.
Very succinctly put. Yeah. Precisely. And I don't even think it's necessarily who did it best, because arguably I've heard that Betamax was supposedly the better technology. It's who manages to get to critical mass first tends to be the biggest success out of those particular rivalries.
You can't be as bitter as those who built up a large HD DVD collection for that to all
just
man go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all lives in the cloud now.
I was really hoping HD DVD would win that one.
Oh well, so it goes.
So as far as say the Spire, first of all, I guess I should say the main thing on my mind, which is the background art, the art that you've done is so blatantly your work. And that's something I love about your work and tend to admire about any sort of artist is when they leave some sort of fingerprint, where there's something that you just, it's inherently that person's work and you can just tell. So I love that about your work. And I love that looking at the background art, you can just kind of see your fingerprint all over it from, kind of foggy, dim lit backgrounds with these bright blue and green lights protruding forward. I don't know. It's just very uniquely your work. Which I just kind of wanted to say. That's not really a question, is it? It's just a statement.
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all. And that's definitely, that's kind of the holy grail for a lot of artists, is the idea of establishing our own voice. I think it's a big part of it's a big part of being true to yourself as an artist. It's also a big part of being able to establish a brand that can, make more money as an artist and make it a sustainable living, because people, will pay a lot less for the sort of image making that's very commoditized, and where the competition between artists has pushed the prices down. So that's why, for example, compared to what I do, a lot of the anime art, a lot of the fan art, a lot of the things of that nature that you see in Comic-Cons, the prices are constantly being pushed down. Like everyone's competing in the same arena, as it were, with the same voice that they've all borrowed from the same movies and the same TV shows. And largely when talking about anime, for example, stylistically, I have nothing against it, but it's a style that was developed in part to make it easy for teams of artists to all work together on the same project and not have a specific voice. So in embracing that, a lot of artists have basically devalued their own work, and they're competing in a forum where the style itself is designed to make it easy for other people to compete with you.
Right.
So I think it's something that if you want to move up the value chain and sell higher value art, make more money, make a more sustainable living, and not be a starving artist, it's something you have to consider. Maybe it's possible to make a good living off of those things, but you have to sell obscene quantities in order to do so. And there are some people who do that. Seems to be very few of them, and so I guess my opinion is it's probably actually easier to pursue your own voice than to try and compete with like the Walmarts of the art world.
So how's the year ahead looking for you? Is there anything on the horizon of special note?
Well, it's looking just as busy. I've got at least 12 conventions lined up for this year. I'll be going to my first one in just a few days. I'll be going to Conuga in Tennessee, in Chattanooga. I've got relatives down there, so I started doing the show last year, and it was a nice opportunity to hang out with relatives that I don't get to see too often, and get my foot wet for conventions for the year. And then from there, it just kind of it's going to be a busy year. I'll be all over the place. I'll be going to Denver and Phoenix, and I've got shows here in Seattle, and I'll be going to Indianapolis, and I might even get all the way to Atlanta for Dragon Con. Who knows?
Nice.
I haven't heard back from that one yet.
Yeah. How is life on the road and the convention scene? Like, do you get to enjoy the places that you get to see?
Well, I don't tend to spend a lot of extra time there, because any extra time I spend in the places that I'm traveling to is time away from the studio, which means I'm not getting freelance work that I need to get done. I'm not getting personal work to feed into this whole business done. And I've got a little, 1.5-year-old kid at home that I love to hang out with. So and my wife, of course. So,
right.
It's actually it's tough. It's lonely in that sense. On the other hand, I've got a lot of artist friends who do a lot of the same conventions that I do.
Mm.
So I get to hang out with them and see them quite regularly, even though we're coming from all over the country. And usually each day after the convention's done, we'll go out and, find some food and talk shop for a bit. So that part's quite nice.
That is cool. I was curious. You mentioned that you basically don't really get the time on the road to work on any artwork. So this question might be just kind of daft. But if you were to practice, or not practice, but just work on sketches, or just do an art for fun, would you take like a pen and paper, or would you bring like a Wacom tablet and go on the computer? In other words, is it strictly digital at this point in life?
Yeah, all my commercial work pretty much is digital. I would like to start re-exploring some traditional work, for one thing, because there's kind of like a higher tier of collectors who will, be very excited to collect traditional originals that are completely unique like that. So I've been thinking about doing some paintings based on my pieces that the pieces that I'm most excited about. Maybe recreating them in paint and having it's like, okay, that will be the one of a kind equivalent of this piece. I do have an iPad with me when I'm on the road, and I do have an Apple Pencil, so I can technically do some sketching and some painting. Procreate's a nice product that sort of recreates a bit of the Photoshop experience. So it's possible. It's just I'm kind of exhausted, and I'm doing a lot of other things, I guess, when I'm on the road. So I'm not trying to like double dip my time. I don't want to burn out.
Right. Yeah.
So I tend not to do a whole lot of sketching when I'm out on the road.
Got you. I've got another question on Slay the Spire for you. So one thing that's really cool is that I like how the character art and the background art, they fit really well together. There's quite a harmony between the art styles, considering it was different artists. Yourself doing the backgrounds and others doing the characters. Let's say, what kind of like guidelines or structure were you given, if any, when it came to creating the backgrounds?
They gave me a little bit of information. Like I guess you could say, the artist who did, or the programmer who did the character art also kind of acted as the art director, and so he would do some sketches for each of the areas, and that kind of was the concept art that I would work from. And they would give me some description about what each area was supposed to be like. Like, okay, the first area is kind of this dingy dungeon basement kind of area. The second area is a city, and the city has this theme of hierarchy and birds. And so the powerful in this city live in these kind of like birdhouse structures that are like very narrow columns at the base, but they widen out at the top, and so being able to fly, for example, or maybe just having a little too much appreciation for birds, has led to this place having that hierarchy, wealthy structures above, and then very humble, cobbled together hovels huddled on the floor below them. And so these were things that we'd have like a Skype chat or something ahead of me turning in my first rough sketches, so that I just had an idea. And I wouldn't say that they were too overpowering in terms of like feedback and stuff. They did let me come up with a lot of how these things actually looked for myself. But we would have like an initial discussion and some initial like very rough concept art as a starting point.
That's pretty cool. I like the idea of more descriptive instructions as opposed to any sort of rough examples. That way you have true expressive freedom instead of having something kind of stuck in the back of your head based on, a sketch that somebody else done. So that's I would think that would be kind of ideal where you could just run with it. Did you submit like a couple of different options per background and they would pick from it?
Not for this particular project. At least not that I don't have any recollection of that being the case. I think in the third area, I actually did sketch out some concepts on paper, because the area has a very abstract feel. It's a lot of bones and ice connecting in weird ways, like kind of like H.R. Geiger, the artist that the Alien movies are essentially based on, stylistically. Was kind of the feel of that area, but I wanted to kind of get, and they had mixed in some ideas from Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, as far as, there's like floating geometric shapes, and then there's this bony weird mass. Also a little bit, I was actually drawing some inspiration from the Land of the Dead in King's Quest VI.
Yeah, nice.
For that particular area. So I did some sketches myself on that one after they had described sort of what they were looking for, and then I would just kind of like leap into the background and start pushing shapes around and coming up with something that looked neat to me, and then sharing it with them. And most of their feedback at that point would end up just being like, okay, refine it some more and we'll be good.
That's pretty cool. Did you ever, I know with some of the lines of work that I'm involved in, being in the background is of the utmost importance. So I guess the question is, was there a concern at any point with some of the work being too loud that it might grab too much attention?
Yeah, that's always definitely something that you have to keep in mind with this sort of game stuff. So we were kind of playing around with colors, trying to keep things from being too contrasty in the background, also values of dark to light, so that the characters in the middle ground would be able to read really clearly, because the overall structure of each scene has a foreground with like some stuff that's kind of sticking up down at the bottom of the screen, and then there's like a plane that the characters are fighting on, and that's kind of where the focus really needs to be. And then there's the background, which just gives us an overall atmosphere for each area. And so it was actually interesting, because I was doing prints of all of these recently. I did a Kickstarter for my art from the game last summer, where I was putting my art onto prints and playmats, and I was updating the art because when they commissioned the art, they only had 2 of the characters designed, and now there's 4. And so when I was doing the prints, I realized that most of these backgrounds are like so dark and dingy, they don't really print very well. So I had to make some significant changes to how dark they were, basically, in order for them to print. So what works for the computer screen and for use is different than what's useful for prints.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, some adjustments. And to those listening who don't have any mental imagery of Slay the Spire, when you're describing the foreground having some clutter, it just, when I saw it, it reminded me of like the beginning of Space Quest 3, where you got this kind of clutter, and then you have the center ground, I think is you maybe called it, where you've got the main characters.
The middle ground.
Middle ground, thank you.
So you were talking about your Patreon work there. How is your Patreon structured right now?
tier structures. Basically, at the bottom, it's like people who are just like, egging me on, do more. At the higher tiers, there's a variety of perks that you can get, like postcards at intervals or prints at intervals, discounts on my online shop, sharing basically the behind the scenes stuff, having access to all of the stories that go along with the art, things of that nature. Basically, Patreon's always this really careful balance, I find, trying to give something back to the community of people who support the work, but at the same time, not trying to load myself up with too much extra in the way of duties and fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, what I found is that most of these people are supporting just because they want me to do more of the thing, and they will, through the Patreon or through my other social media, they'll get to see it, they'll get to enjoy it, and they'll get to know that it's happening because they're supporting.
Right.
And as an artist, that's a really hard thing to accept. You're always like, oh, but what else do you want from me? Like, this can't be it. Like, here, take my blood, take my heart. What else can I do? But really, it's just a matter of connecting with people over a period of time, and they connect with you on a personal level. They connect with your art that speaks to them. It's something that they're not getting or seeing maybe from elsewhere, and they want to see more of it. And so they're like, yeah, I'll chip in a few bucks, and a few, would like more perks and or just, they have the means to support more than that, and they'll give more. So it's been pretty good. I've been running the Patreon for like a year and a half now, and it's going quite well.
Great, that's good to hear.
Might I recommend like a very top tier for like $1,000 where you offer a tastefully drawn nude of said Patreon supporter, like Titanic style, real romantic.
Well, the funny thing with that is that I'm a landscape painter, not a character artist. So, I mean, if you want a nude that looks more like a landscape, okay.
All right, so we're just about out of time here, but in closing, any plugs, shout-outs, or any little things you'd like to wrap up with?
Well, you can find me on patreon.com/Bruce Brenneise, and I know my name's a difficult one, but I assume it's going to be up on your site.
It'll be the name of the episode, even.
Exactly. And my website for generals, you can just go and enjoy the art that I've been able to make public, is brucebrenneise.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again, Bruce, for taking the time to join us. It is, I can honestly say, always a pleasure to have you on. It's very fascinating to hear from the artistic side of things.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for being here, mate. I think I get really kind of warmed up the more we go every time we talk to you, so I think all my good questions are built up towards the end, so we might have to just bloody have you on again, another year anniversary or something, so I can get some of the ones I just thought of out of my system.
Wait, do you have more questions, Paul?
No, not. We can close out. We can save it for next time. Don't call me out, mate. I have none.
Well, I'll be happy to be on in another year and 5 days.
Well, for now, drop us a line. If you would like to demand Bruce come back sooner rather than later, then start shouting at us on Facebook. We have a group, we have a page. We're on Twitter at the CG Guild. You can find us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Classic Gamers Guild. We are on Instagram sometimes at CGG Podcast. And, and we have an email address, which is mail@classicgamersguild.com. And I think that's all of it. Did I miss anything else Paul?
No, I think we gave the listeners a lot of homework. There's a lot of Patreons you got to check out. Call your moms, drink lots of water.
Check out all of those things. Study for it. It's on the exam.
Exactly. Again, thanks for being on, Bruce. We bloody love you, mate. And thank you all for listening. And don't do a murder.